All right, well, welcome back to another episode of LorcanaChats. I am Chris, aka Questing for Lore, and today I am fortunate enough to have the entire crew of the Rules of Villainy podcast with me today. How's it going, guys?
Feeling good. How are you?
Awesome,
Good.
awesome, doing good, doing good. Thanks for taking the time to sit down with me and talk and just chat through some stuff. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, of course. We're happy to be here.
And thanks for
Thanks for
taking the
having
time
us.
to I know it's been hard just getting this scheduled, and I just appreciate your patience in getting us on here as we really wanted to do
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
So thank you
Well,
so
and
much.
it's always harder when there's more than one person. Everybody has different schedules, and I know y'all had a an event that was going on earlier tonight. So, yeah, no, this worked out great. So appreciate
Yeah.
it.
Brad did. I
Um,
ditched.
well,
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's okay. I know you've been super busy. And then Seattle came and went while we were trying to schedule this as well. So it's just
right.
been
Yeah. Yep.
it's been hectic, but we got here and I'm excited to be here.
Yeah. Nice. Well, I'm glad to have you guys here. So, I like to start off with kind of getting the origin stories for my guests. I'd love to hear, I know y'all had one of the very first videos that you put out was kind of a why a podcast, who we are kind of thing. But I'd like to hear straight from y'all, just kind of a real quick summary of your history with TCGs, your history with Lorcana, why Lorcana, all that kind of good stuff.
Yeah. Brad, you want to take it first?
Yeah, I feel like we're all going to say the same thing. We all met playing the game. We didn't know each other ahead of time, and we played. I played a bunch of different places and met them at different locations. And Lorcana itself was the Disney brand. I thought I'm a collector of all kinds of knickknacks. I have been through Funko and just different toys. I still collect a lot of toys, but now my main focus has been cards. I was like, I think I could get into collecting cards, and it turned into I think I could play this game. And now it's a year later doing a podcast about it. But it's just been so exciting and continues to be. And these guys help make it exciting every day. We're chatting about some aspect of it, and just absolutely love it. What about you guys?
We like to make sure that the mayor goes first. It's the proper order of operations
Yeah, yeah. We'll get to
here.
the whole mayor thing here after a little bit. I'm curious about that one.
It's
So,
honestly my pride and joy of everything I've ever done in Lorcana. But yeah, I mean, you know, for me, Lorcana was originally I was just gonna collect it. Like I saw the artwork, it looked really cool. I have friends that are really into board games, and I saw it launch at Gen Con, and I wish I had been as into Lorcana today as I was then, that I wasn't then, so that I could have like stood in line, been the first to get, the first chapter boxes. But I went to a few game stores to do a learn to play, and I was like, actually, this game's kind of fun. Found new game stores, really blessed in the St. Louis area to have a whole bunch of game stores. And then I ran into these two, and we decided, well, let's do a podcast together. We became friends. And so I didn't know them, almost a year ago, probably even a year ago. I don't think maybe
Yeah,
we're just starting to get to know each other about a year ago right now because it was, as it was really hard to get first chapter product
yeah.
at the beginning. And so I was playing at a store and it was just me and like three other people every week because nobody had product and stuff. And so, playing the same cards over and over again, really
Yeah,
excited for
yeah.
the Rise of Floodborn to come out.
Nice. Nice.
Oh,
I like I like to think it was one of those sort of campfire moments. We are all just sitting around, maybe at the bar after a 3-0 victory at local game store, and we just kind of looked at each other and we're like, we should start a podcast, shouldn't we? So it was kind of fate there.
Yeah, as far as that
Nice.
goes, it was one of those things where we like all kind of separately talked about having done other things or trying to do it. So like Andy talked a lot about having all this podcast equipment and he's really interested into it. Brad had a podcast before in the film space and so he talked about it. And so Brad and I talked a little bit about it. We drove together to Chicago and we had talked about it a lot in kind of like our local game stores. So there's no like one person that had a genesis of the idea of let's do this podcast. It was more like, hey, we've kind of like low key been joking about this, so let's do it.
Yeah.
Okay, so not all of y'all have had experience making content before. Just Brad or
I was a streamed on Twitch for a little while, maybe three or
oh,
four
okay.
years ago. I made an affiliate. I was playing like PC
Oh,
gaming and stuff. So I had, like Vince said, I had a lot of the equipment left over from that, and
right.
pod kind of a low overhead entry point. You just need
Hmm.
a couple of Lumineers, a microphone, and hit record. Um, but yeah, so I think Vince had also wanted, had some of the equipment as well. I'm not sure if you had done a podcast before or just almost started, and we'd all kind of just sort of dipped our toe in it. And
Yeah.
Lorcana was just so much fun, so it was really easy to get into.
No, like most men in their 30s, is like itching for creating the podcast. And so I kept trying to convince my friends to do one. I was like trying to convince one of my friends to do I'm a big Star Trek fan. I was like, let's do a Star Trek podcast. And I just couldn't do it. I couldn't convince it. So I had all this equipment. And I was like, lucky that I found these two guys that were like, yeah, let's do a Lorcana podcast. This will be fun. And, I think the rest is history. So.
Yeah,
But
it's
Andy gives a lot. He's not. He's been a little shy here. He's the one who makes our show look as good as it does, and does all kind of the graphics work behind it, and has like really upped the production level. Like as we've gotten into live streams,
Hmm.
and doing that stuff. So it's really kind of on helping us be, if you will, on the cutting edge of what OBS can do to create stuff. So we'd be lost if it were for him.
absolutely. I've
Yeah.
always been included on a movie podcast or worked together with another couple guys in video games, and I didn't have to do a lot of the work, but I was always interested in doing something like that. And it's really easy, like when you're passionate about something like this game, like
Hmm.
playing this game multiple nights a week. It's like, yeah, let's do it. I don't have the technical prowess to do what Andy does, but I'm willing to learn, and that's part of the reason why I never did something like this on my own. Probably what Vince was alluding to is just that I don't know how, but we formed
Yep.
together, and we all have our place in doing this, and work, I think, tremendously well as a team in making this grow and being what it
Hmm.
is. That and like it's fantastic. But I 100% agree with Vince. It a lot of it's on Andy's shoulders. Like if you like you mentioned the audio only pod, to me I'm like, yeah, that's easy. We can talk for an hour just for some audio. But then 2 episodes later we're doing video for the first time, and then things
Yeah,
are
yeah.
changing and things are looking better every single time, and that's all Andy, and it's amazing.
Yeah, I was actually curious about that. What kind of led to the decision to move to a video and audio kind of situation versus just sticking with audio?
I think we always wanted to do more content besides just the podcast. So like the live streams are a thing I know me and Vince are both super interested in, and um, Brad is also interested in as well, like casting those. And I remember watching the first DLC and seeing some of the like hiccups that they had along the way as a professional production crew, and I'm thinking to myself, I can do this. Like I've got a couple webcams and like some
Yeah,
gear
yeah.
left over from streaming. Like we should be able to do this. And turns out, it is a lot of work, but it's a ton of fun. So switching over to video was it seems as easy as just sort of turning your camera on and then hitting record again. But it requires an intro, and then
Hmm.
these guys come to me and they want to put the card up really big so people can read it and stuff. And
Yep.
it adds work, but I think it's really worth it. I think the sort of fun and excitement that we have doesn't always translate to audio only as well.
Hmm.
The laughing and having a good time and some of the funny faces Brad makes and things. So adding the video is a worthwhile step, I think,
Yep.
for the
Yeah.
audience.
I also think, we were kind of already recording like in Discord already. So we were already watching each other. We have this like bot that comes in. His name is Craig. And he'll like come in, it's like now recording. And so like we joke about it all the time. It's so funny. But we just kind of like quickly realized that to get more of our content out there, getting on YouTube was kind of the next step. And,
Hmm.
there are a lot of great audio content creators in Lorcana. And so, I don't want to say anything negative about that. Like but we're dealing with a visual card game. And so it's super hard. And I give a lot of kudos to those audio only podcasts to convey what is a visual medium in an audio
Hmm.
only format. But we have a lot of listeners too that are on our audio only format, and we try to cater to that. It is difficult because sometimes like Andy will hold up a card on his
Right.
camera and it'll be like, to our audio listeners, like we're showing you this card. So it's kind of a balance. But I think, in the TCG space, if we're really talking about what is a visual card game, we really felt that we needed to be on, YouTube primarily for having some sort of video format.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
and
I
it
think
definitely makes a difference. It's one thing to be able to, like you're saying, to be able to hear, somebody talking about something and hearing the passion in their voice, or, that they're just enjoying the conversation with other people, on the audio only. But then you add that dimension of being able to see their faces, being able to, feel like they're a little bit more of a person, I guess. It's not just like this audio that you're listening to. It's like you're seeing their mannerisms. You get to know, how they're moving when they're talking and what it looks like when they're excited about something. And it's really cool. It's really interesting to see how much more video can add to the same kind of conversations. Um, I distribute this one the same way. I do primarily the videos, and then I distribute an audio only version of it. And speaking from experience, it is really easy to forget that there's an audio only version. It's like
absolutely.
I'll hold
Yeah.
up, I'll grab a card or something from the back, and I'm like, "Oh, you mean this card?" And like hold it up, and it's like they're not going to know what I'm talking about. So,
Right.
but
Yeah.
yeah,
I mean,
there's all sorts of interesting stuff that comes with it.
to add a little bit to that, it's like I think we forgot this week that one of our episodes didn't quite make it out on audio. Like just to
Oh,
talk about how like sometimes
yeah.
it was I think like a Spotify issue. It wasn't our on our end, but we just didn't realize that it hadn't gone out until we like were getting ready to release our most recent episode. So I mean, I think all this is to say is that content creation is a lot harder than I think people anticipate that it is.
Hmm.
And I mean to do it well. We have a really light
Right.
structure to our show. Like other shows might have a really formal structure, but we want folks to come into it and feel like they're a part of our, friend group. Like we're all just
Hmm.
chatting together and they're just, sitting there along with us, along for the ride.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's nice whenever you have that kind of situation too, because we have so many different kinds of content in the community. You have the people that are doing the hardcore deck list, reviews and everything. But then you have stuff that's a little bit more on the casual side, that it's just like you're sitting down at the LGS with a group of friends and, you just happen to be playing Lorcana or something, something like that. But it's nice to have those kind of comfort situations. It's interesting to talk to people and hear that there are quite a few people that, and I kind of was there for the early days of podcasting back when it was this new amazing thing, and everybody was like, "Oh my gosh, this is crazy." And it was like you listen to a podcast and that's what you're doing. That was the thing. But now there's a lot of people that for a lot of the more casual kind of content, they'll just put it on in the background, or they'll listen to it while they're doing stuff around the house, or something like that. Um, and it's interesting to hear about all the different ways that people consume the content that we create. We kind of sit around and we're like, well, it's like, you're sitting at the table with a bunch of friends. It's like, well, maybe that's not how they consume it. Maybe they just like listening in on the table full of friends, that happens to be
Right.
sitting right next to it. So,
Yeah.
but But yeah, it's interesting. It's definitely a labor of love for a lot of people. I know, Brad, you kind of mentioned some of the passion and really wanting to do it. I think that's such a huge factor in all of this to really, especially when you have a group of people like y'all, to really have three people really invested in it and really
Mhm.
enjoying it. I mean, you can completely tell from y'all's episodes that, you're just having a great time, It's not like you're
Yeah.
you're forcing it or anything like that.
Yeah.
You're just, having fun, cracking jokes, all sorts of stuff.
And
But
that's it's
We
like
fake
that.
it well.
Yeah.
No, just kidding.
I say it's that's not just on camera too. That's all day on Discord every
yeah.
day. Behind the scenes too. We get along so well. It's a great group, and we have a community behind us and a team even that adds to that just love for the game, and it makes it more important to like, even if I don't enjoy it one night, I'm hoping that somebody is going to. And like, just like my previous hobbies, like when I was doing movies, I was reviewing movies sometimes 3 times a week, and eventually I loved movies, and I just eventually got burnt out, and I'm
Yeah.
doing my best in this hobby right now to balance that, because I don't want that to happen with this. And I think it helps that we have new sets coming out every 3 months, something to talk about,
Yeah.
good people to talk about it with and theorize and deck build. And it's a balance, but the passion is still strong right now to keep going. And I'm enjoying so much of it.
Yeah,
Nice.
I think one of the reasons that I even got into this was, every week at the local game store, I would talk to all of my friends and oftentimes tell a lot of the same stories, how a match went at a different weekly, my
Mhm.
thoughts on new cards. People would come up to me and ask, oh, what do you think of my deck list? How do you think this combo works and things? And my wife got mad at me because we would stay 30 minutes, hour late past, it's
Yeah.
ending, because I'm chit chatting with everyone talking. And I'm like, you know, I would love to just be able to, share the story once and reach, all of these people and maybe save some time and stuff. And it's it's really awesome to be able to go into my local game store and see my friends and be able to sort of continue these conversations that we have on the podcast that they listen to, and they've got their thoughts on it and stuff. And we've got our
Mhm.
like Brad said in the Discord, our regular, friends and listeners and stuff. And to go back and forth, it's a lot of fun and very, very rewarding. And I would I would keep doing this, regardless of how many people listened or watched, for sure. It's
Yeah.
it's just a lot of fun to put together.
Yeah, it's interesting. I don't know, in listening to other podcasts and kind of other areas, not really like TCG kind of related things, or even really like some board game related things. I don't know if I've ever really heard outside of the Lorcana community people that are creating content, hearing about them, talking to the people that are listening that are local. That it's like, oh yeah, we had a conversation at the LGS, last week, ended up on the podcast. You go to the league the next week and it's like, oh yeah, I listened to the latest episode. I had some other thoughts on it, and it's cool to see kind of those two worlds kind of mesh, and meet up there. So that it's not just like this isolated thing, right? It's not just y'all creating this content and putting it out there and it's like whoever listens, listens. That's great.
It's
Um,
even wilder when you go across the country and people come up to you and say that they've listened to your episodes and, excited.
mhm. Right.
Incredible. Like, we,
Yeah.
that's when it really clicked, was in Seattle. This was our first
Yeah.
DLC as a podcast. We were talking about it, like Vince said, on the way to Chicago and so on. But going to Seattle, and at least two, I know Andy had his own, and then I had 2 instances where people came up and they knew the podcast and things that we talked about on it. And I was like,
That's
holy
awesome.
cow, I know it's a very niche market, because we're just catering to Lorcana and everybody there is playing Lorcana. But the fact that we were however many 100 miles away and somebody said that just completely floored me. It's insane. And like Andy said, rewarding and just so much fun that so
Mhm.
many people love this game.
Yeah, and we're
Yeah.
also just really blessed in the sense that we've got such a great community here in the St. Louis area that's like just
Absolutely.
willing to back us up. So we just did a collab with Shmorkana for
hmm
the awards, and I
hmm
was listening to
Yep.
them talk about how
That's a good one.
they were, yeah, they were, well, they one of the co-hosts was talking about how she didn't play one of us. She played somebody, not
But
even,
Ryan,
yeah,
yeah.
Ryan,
Oh
who's
yeah,
on our
the
team.
friend of
And
one
yeah,
of
yeah, the
yeah.
friend, it's like gave out stickers. And I was like, we just had so many folks. We had like a dad and his two sons went, and they were just constantly coming up to me asking me for more stickers so they could give out and stuff. So it's just we just have really such a great buy-in from our, the area of our folks here. And I definitely think like, our success and our future success is all really like super reliant on how much they've helped us as well. So not just
Yep,
the content we
absolutely.
put out.
yeah.
I've said it before, and I don't mean to diss any other Lorcana community out there, but St. Louis, I think, has the best Lorcana community in existence. So
The
if you're
best
listening,
mayor for sure.
Ravensburger,
Oh, speaking
DLC
of
St.
which,
Louis.
the mayor. All right, I have to know the story. Where did this come from?
This happened by accident, and like Vince said,
No,
he's
it didn't
he's
happen by
very
accident.
very proud of the fact that we before we had a Rules of Villainy Discord, there is a local community Discord with a couple hundred people on it. Very cool because, like I said, there's any night of the week there's Lorcana firing off somewhere, and I happen to be there at Vince's store, and somebody on the Discord was like, "Of course Brad's there," because at the beginning of this, I was playing probably every night of the week. And like, of course, Brad's there. And Vince gets in that Discord and he goes, yeah, the mayor of Lorcana has to please his constituents. And everybody just ate that up, and thought that was so funny. And at first I was like a little embarrassed because I'm like, all right, maybe I'm playing this game too much. And so I just kind of like pushed
Am I
it away.
overdoing it? Yeah.
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 And so I kind of pushed it away. But then after I realized like just how much fun it is and how much I enjoy being in this space, like I'm just gonna lean into it. So it became a thing. But it was 100% credited to Vince for
Yeah.
initially saying that.
It was one of those repetitive things too. So I was guilty of going to a few stores as well. But every time I'd run into Brad, I'd be like, "Oh, hey, the mayor's here," and stuff. Like I think people would just like slowly, subliminally, like pick that up, and it eventually just became a thing. That finally, what I think really took it off was somebody who ran the Discord forced to change in his name to be the mayor of Lorcana, and like by
That's
then it was
awesome.
too late. There was no going back.
Yep.
Yep.
I have not changed it to this day.
You
Fun
introduced
story.
him. Yeah,
When
go
we were
ahead.
in Chicago, we ran into B squared,
Mhm.
and I was like, "Hey, Brand," because I had watched him in Jonty. There was like kind of my
Right.
entry point into
Yep.
content creation.
This Week in Ink.
And
Yeah.
yeah, this week in ink. And I was like, "Hey, Brandon, you were talking about how you were like potentially looking for folks to like interview in the DLC stream." I was like, "Here's the mayor of Lorcana himself right here."
I was so embarrassed. I wasn't familiar enough with the content creator space yet or whatever. I recognized
awesome.
him and I'm like, he's not going to know this. This is a St. Louis thing. What are you doing? I talked to him months later. He remembered that interaction. So it worked. He's
Yeah.
cool. We've chatted with him several times. And
Yeah.
but yeah, never would have expected that would have lasted beyond that.
And he thinks I'm done with this. I'm not. Like I'm committed. Yeah, he may be the mayor of Lorcana here in St. Louis, but we're getting him a top hat, and he's going global.
A top hat. That's
El
awesome.
Presidente of Lorcana.
I fully expect to see you in a top hat at future DLCs.
That's a 2025 thing. Yeah, we're working on it.
Actually,
and
Andy's been looking at shops.
I did, but Brad's also being incredibly humble. I think part of it has to do with how nice he is to everyone. I almost kind of think he's like our own little Ryan Miller. The thing about Ryan Miller, you meet him, he
That is
makes
too
you feel
much.
like you're his best friend, like
Yep.
immediately, and like you walk away feeling like, wow, we're good buddies. We're gonna get a drink together and stuff. And Brad, besides just going to every local game store, it's not like he was just going there, winning all the promos and leaving everyone in the dust.
Right.
He was shaking hands and kissing babies, and he was really doing the politicking. And so
I was gonna say all the things
just
a good
comes-
politician does. Yeah.
Yeah, it just comes natural. I enjoy the game. I want everybody to because I know it can get really competitive, and I know I sometimes
Mhm.
stress out in the competitive scene, but ultimately I want to remind myself to have fun with the game and make it fun for everybody else, especially the kids. There's a lot of kids in the community too,
Yeah.
two of which Vince mentioned went to Seattle, or maybe somebody did. But they they are just fantastic, and they playing them just after a stressful day, it's always a good time, and I want them to enjoy it. And just as I do a 30-year-old guy playing the game. Let's have fun with it. No one need to
Yeah.
stress out. So
Yeah.
He's
Yeah.
also such a good
There's
teacher too. So he's taught a
oh,
lot of folks how to play the
I'm
game
gonna cry.
at
Stop it.
the store. And so, in fact, I'll just say this one last story about the mayor of Lorcana here is that we were playing, and so we have a regular, and she is a like a 5-year-old son who comes, and so
Oh,
Mhm.
Andy built him a what kind of deck was that? It was a
Titans.
Titans deck.
Titans from
Yeah,
Hercules.
Okay.
yeah,
Right,
Titans
right.
deck from, and he came and he beat Brad and me at the thing, and he went home and told his dad. We found this out later, but he's like, I beat the mayor and the bosses of
The mayor.
Lorcana tonight.
That's awesome.
I legitimately teared up when Heather told us that. It was like,
No.
wow, her son thinks that we're the bosses of Lorcana, and he beat us, and so it made his night. And
He,
Andy did something similar for at another store, weeks later, where just like seeing the kids light up and have fun with the game is what it's all about
oh
to
yeah.
me, and I'll
Yeah.
always make that experience like that for them.
Yeah, I mean, and it's something to be said for having people like that, that can sit down with the kids or just, with adults that are there that are new and just teach them the game, teach
Yeah.
them, how to enjoy it. There's so many different ways to approach the game, whether it's competitive, casual, and having that good support system at the LGS there that, you can go and you go on a certain night of week, you can expect the same people to be there, the same, you kind of get comfortable with it. I know there's a lot of people that they really, especially that first time, especially if it's their first TCG, stepping out and going to an LGS is like a huge first step for them. And having
Yeah.
people there that are that welcoming atmosphere, that are happy to teach and happy to, provide advice and just in general, nice people helps
Mhm.
so much. Especially for a game that I mean, it really is a social game when you get down to it. I
Sure.
mean, it's competitive and everything, and you have to know the right things to play at the right time and all that. Um, but you're sitting across from someone, you're interacting with someone. I went to the Atlanta DLC and I met so many nice people just just sitting down and playing with them, and that we
Yeah.
were being playing competitively, obviously. But there were so many people that were just happy to talk and just get to know each other a little bit. And, of course, I got my pants beat off, but, I
You
did not
too?
do well. But, um, but yeah, it was still fun. It was interesting. And then you see those people around and you're like, oh, hey, I think one of the people I played early on day one, I ended up playing in a sealed tournament later on in the day, on the second day. And I was like, "Oh, hey, how's it going? How you been doing?" It's
Yep.
like your old friends almost.
Yep. My
So,
very
Absolutely.
first my very first match in Atlanta was a guy named Craig. It was my first DLC.
okay.
I was nervous as heck, and we still had positive, fun interaction. And a month later, I run into him in Chicago. He asked, "Hey, how you doing?" We caught up again. 3 months later, I run into him in Seattle again, and still have that like lasting relationship. We're like,
That's awesome.
somebody else who got O2'd might be really upset, but he's still walking up and saying hi to me. And that's not his slight at Craig. He's so super. I always joke about the 2-0 that I gave him, but
Mm.
yeah, now he's making like those foil mats you might have seen on Twitter on that
Oh,
I
yeah,
didn't
yeah.
realize that was him until I talked to him in Seattle, and I'm like, okay, well, I'm gonna need to get some
That's
work
cool.
done from you, but it just goes to show the point you're making about the relationships you make, is just
Hmm.
ongoing, and it's fantastic. I have nothing but good things to say about it.
No.
Yeah, I like to think, and I tell my opponents that after we play, we're soul bound for the rest of this tournament, right? Because your wins are my tiebreakers, and my wins are your tiebreakers, and so I end up meeting, you know, one, two, three, six, seven people that every round when I walk past them to go to a table, how's it going? How'd you do? And it's
Yep.
uh, uh, and the same thing, meeting people in the sealeds and the drafts the day before when they added those on Friday was really awesome because now again it's just more people I get to see and wave and say hi to again and check in with how their weekend's going and
Hmm.
it's always good to hear that everyone's having a great time as well.
Yeah, it's really cool to see. And now Lorcana is my first TCG too. I mean, I did Magic kind of back in the day. But it's always
Maybe.
interesting to me to see how like welcoming and open this community is, and that it's not something that's happened by accident. It's definitely something that like the players, themselves, the community members have really tried to make it that way, as well as Ravensburger. They've definitely done the work on their side to try to keep it that way and really provide, not just a game that anybody can play, right? It's easy to learn, hard to master kind of thing. But to provide situations and events like the DLCs where they're still welcoming to people that maybe haven't been to a DLC before. It's not like you're going to walk into a room and just be completely isolated the entire weekend. Like you're saying, sit down, talk to people, see them later, wave, ask
Yep.
how it's going, and that just kind of seems like the people that the game just kind of naturally attracts, it seems like.
Yeah.
Yeah. I remember walking into Atlanta DLC with Brad, and he told me, he was like, "Man, you just like talk to people and you just like meet random people and are so friendly and stuff." And I'm like, I guess, but like you do that too. And next thing you know, it's like round four, and Brad's like, I met someone who went to the same local game store as us like 3 years ago in St. Louis. And like he's got all these friends, that he's met from DLC to DLC. It's just the game is so welcoming. It just, it's so much fun, really.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
also really just like the age difference, the diversity in the game. I in Seattle, I was in my first round. I was playing, a guy, and his daughter was just a seat away. And what was really great is how Ravensburger accommodated them, so
Mhm.
that they would have assigned seats so he could keep an eye on his daughter like the whole time, make sure she was having a good time and stuff. But just seeing like, or I met this gentleman, his name was Marcus, and he was an older gentleman and he played because his son was really good. He got his son into like Yu-Gi-Oh when he was a kid, and then got really into Lorcana. And so he's just, you could just see him with such pride talking about
Mhm.
his son in this game. And like, yeah, I got in this game because my son wants to beat me up about, needed like a sparring partner, if you will. And now his wife is like, I want to get on this. And they have to be my parents' age, right? And so just
Yeah.
seeing kind of that diversity in a card game is really, really special, and just shows that Lorcana, Disney, and Ravensburger really all have this really kind of special sauce that I'm really, really excited to see what happens in the future. Because like we're barely a year old. It's
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
wild
Just
to think
over.
about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We
Yeah. It's
barely
pretty
have,
crazy.
we don't even have fucking cards yet, right? We're still 1,000 something cards.
I think so.
It's like
Yeah.
1,500 with this set. So it's like, that's there's a long ways to go. And I think Ravensburger has said before that they have something like 10 years planned out already,
Hmm.
um, which is just, I'm so excited. I'm along for the ride.
Yeah.
Whatever happens, I'm here for it. I love it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they've
And
just been
now,
so
oh,
good at like responding to the feedback of the community. I mean,
mhm.
you've got Rochelle and all the folks at Ravensburger that are just out there, really marketing the game and hearing the feedback, and like really not just want to hear our feedback, but really interested in taking notes to make changes. Cause like, I mean, as Andy kind of alluded to, the changes in the DLC from Atlanta
Yeah.
to
Sh-
Seattle, just like night and day. And I didn't go to Atlanta, but I went to Chicago. And I mean, even from Chicago to Seattle, like just the marketed improvement of how these things are being run, and the
mhm.
feedback that Ravensburger is taking to heart.
Yeah. And I think the Illuminateers, just before we started our recording, they actually had the head of PPG on to talk some
Oh,
about that exact thing, where they had him on at the very beginning when the DLCs were first announced and kind of some of the plans on that side, and now kind of did like a retrospective of it. And it was interesting to hear him describe that evolution. to talk about, how they did take that feedback and they said, okay, what can we improve? And it was that incremental improvements, that they made each time. And it kind of amounted to, what Seattle became. Um, and it was always interesting to listen kind of secondhand to other content creators that went to the DLCs and they're like, well, this was our experience, here's what we think they could do better. And then, sure enough, a couple of DLCs later, that issue was resolved. That was, because that was something that was pointed out, I'm sure, not by just one person, um, but yeah, I'm with you. I really look forward to seeing, what the higher level events look like, at the end of the year, and then what the events look like moving forward, just throughout the year. It's going to be really interesting, and I think they're only going to get bigger. They're going to have to figure out some way to try to wrangle these things a little, because I mean, there's a lot of people now, so when you start getting, double the amount of people what they have now, it just starts getting, yeah. But
Yeah.
there's other games out there that do it, so I have no idea that, or no doubt that it can be done. It's just, how do you do it for Lorcana, basically?
Yeah. I
Yeah.
imagine, we've kind of been tossing around thinking about it. I imagine they're probably gonna need to add more DLCs is probably
Hmm.
the answer, I think.
Well, I know one of our friends was talking to maybe not the head of PBG, and now I got to go back and watch that Illumineers
I know
video
they're
there
they're
to see if they comment on it. But basically, they were saying that they want like 4,000 plus people at these events. So, you know,
Jeez.
they're they may be aiming for more of them, but they're also aiming to try and like maximize the possible size.
wow.
And if I don't remember exactly what like the world record is or whatever, but I believe 4,000 is right around like peak of TCG tournaments. And but again, I'm here for it.
I
That's sounds awesome,
That's
I mean,
honestly.
that's a lot of people and a lot of
It
rounds.
And
Yeah, that is a lot of
yeah,
people. But you know what? I think Ravensburger could do it, and I think those 4,000 people would sell
Yeah.
out. Although I will just say, man,
instantly.
the Illumineers and Liam over there, they're scooping all the leave some content for the rest of us, y'all.
I know, right?
Good.
They have
That's a
so
good
many
get.
people on. I
I
think,
know.
and
I
it's
I
funny. I
joke.
think they were saying at the beginning, they were like trying to count the number of unique guests that they've had on. And I think it was like 140 something. I was like,
sheesh.
oh my gosh.
I know. I,
That's
I know.
insane.
I joke because I think it was the episode before Seattle, like we were talking about the decks that would break down, and I like
Mhm.
legit started to go into a breakdown of the Illumineers episode I had just watched on Monday, and I was like, you know what? We'll link it below. You can go watch
Yeah, yeah. You could do it on your own
it.
time. We don't, yeah, yeah.
We
Yeah.
became a React channel there for
Oh
like
Yeah.
no.
3 minutes as
A
we just
reaction
Yeah.
described.
channel.
But
I mean,
but I joke because I think people don't understand like the great work I think the Illumineers has done for just content creators too, and
mhm.
helping create things like the ink tokens and just the opportunities. So I'm it's all in jest, but yeah,
Oh,
leave
yeah,
some
of
from
course.
us.
Well, and the nice thing is that everybody kind of has their different spin on stuff, right? So y'all aren't going to have the same conversations with people as they would, even though you may talk about basically the same kinds of things. It's just different approaches, different personalities, different interactions. And that's what people want, right? They listen to your podcast because they enjoy listening to you guys talk, about things that they may already know about or they may have heard about or whatever, from other shows or other, kind of content. Um, but that's what they want. They want to, sit down at the table with y'all and, and enjoy the conversation and everything. And so that's the nice thing about just, well, content creation in general. It allows everybody to kind of have their own voice and kind of bring their own perspectives to the table. And even if you, like I said, even if you talk about the same stuff, sometimes there'll be that one little nugget of, something different because, Andy has different experiences than Vince about certain things, in certain games or certain, ink combinations that you've played in the past. And, there might be something that's like, oh yeah, I thought about that the other day, that somebody else might not. So it's cool. It's interesting to see those differences between the different creators that are out there.
Yeah. I think Brad's laughing over there because we get into a
Yeah.
lot. You want to tell like some of the background of things that don't make it to the show?
Oh, I don't know about any of that. I was hoping Andy was going to chime in about the differences that you have in deck count, how many cards are in your deck. But
We like to throw shade on each other for different things. The most recent being Vince's panic adding of 12 cards to his Ruby Sapphire deck the morning of Seattle DLC to go to a
Oh
grand total of
no.
72 cards, which
Holy crap.
I think I think to be fair, he did get one legitimate 2-0 where he didn't have any sort of, judge ruling to give him one of the wins or anything. But the rest of the day went about 12 cards over. Not good.
But Andy, how many did you run?
I ran 62, which is
oh,
also not usual for
Okay.
me. I usually run
Right.
60. I'm a staunch believer of 60, but we met Hamza. He got in Swiss in Vegas and first in Swiss at DLC Seattle, and he runs a Ruby Sapphire with 72 cards. And I had a chat with him where basically he explained that the same sort of math that goes into the 60 cards, can really be done and, proven for 61, 62, 72 if you have cards like Visions of the Future and stuff in your deck. But so yeah, we
Andy's our
like to make fun of
resident
each other.
hypergeometric guy. So if we've got questions about the math behind cards, we just message Andy in the
we ask
Discord.
him, and then he goes and he types it into Google, and then we have a conversation about it.
Hey, it's good
Well,
to have somebody like that, on the team.
I do win the most,
That is true.
competitively in the area
One
of the
might say
three of
you
us.
also
So
play the most out of the three of us too, though. So
you got to play to
uh-huh.
win,
Yeah.
right? Like,
Yeah. But no, yeah, it's he gets a lot of practice too with his wife, who is very much a part of this team, where and she's very good as well. So a lot of the success that Andy and Kirsten see is from all the practicing that they do together, and all the theorizing behind the scenes that me and Vince aren't even a part of, right? So they have so many reps of all these different ideas, and it certainly shows that those kind of reps and that kind of practice gets you on the successful path of set championships and big runs in the DLCs and such. So
Yeah, arguably
yeah,
she's better. She's the
I was
better
gonna
player.
say
I'll always argue that. Yes.
she's better. He does. We brought this up in the last podcast, but basically, I do better in the local like set champs and things like that, and especially when we get like paired against each other, I'll usually beat her. But then when we go to the DLCs, she starts off considerably better and typically ends the day with a good amount more points.
And all of us.
So than all of
Yeah.
us, yeah, and myself
Yeah.
included. So I just like to think, like you said, that focus practice that we do, when you practice against someone who's really good, you get a little bit of rubs off and like, there's a little bit of luck to it. It's all just a coping mechanism because she's better than me. But he is right. We are big proponents of focused practice. If you have that opportunity to, um, have a spouse or a roommate or a friend that lives close by that is into Lorcana, or just force them to be into Lorcana. That is definitely a ticket to getting better for sure.
Yeah, it's nice to, I'm sure it's nice to have that built-in partner to kind of, bounce ideas off of, even if you're not like actually playing right at the moment, to just, like start a conversation when you're out, shopping or something and be like, well, what about this combo? What do you think about this? Or, yeah, that would be
Yeah.
nice. Yeah. Well, so we've talked a lot about the podcast, we've talked about the community, all sorts of stuff. I want to talk about Azurite Sea. So, as of the recording for today, we got the last dump of all the cards that were left. And they put them in the app before it was
Yeah.
even officially released, which is awesome. So impressive. I really appreciate it,
Improvements.
Ravensburger.
Yeah,
Yes,
it's like 2
speaking of
weeks
incremental
early.
improvements, right, right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Anything interesting from you guys' perspective?
Sapphire's looking really, really good, man.
We say
Yes,
that
it
every set,
is.
though.
It's
We say that
true,
every
but
set.
I don't
the
know. This one's looking pretty nice.
We
I
say
have to
that
yeah.
every
say.
set too.
I yeah, I just think the ramp looks really good. I think there's I don't have the list in front of me right now. Some of the cards that are standing out, of course, the Azurite Sea. Sail the Azurite Sea is the big ramp card, the just the bell action basically, but
Better
uh
Tipo.
better Tipo, and you can manipulate it to where you draw first and then do that ink, right? You're basically just declaring, hey, I can ink twice this turn, draw a card, and then if you're pulling for searching for an inkable card, or you're looking for it, but or you could get it from that card. Uh, yeah, I don't know exactly what I want to do yet, but I'm really excited. Big Hero 6 is here. I think I've always had
Yep.
fun with the pirates classification. I'm hoping there's some kind of successful pirate combination that makes that a viable deck. I think they call
Ryan
it
Miller's
what,
deck.
tribal. Yeah,
Ryan
Mm-hmm.
Miller loves the
Mm-hmm.
pirate deck, and this is the set he was teasing.
yeah.
Yep, yep. When
Unfortunately,
he
some of those cards
couldn't
have
say anything
changed.
about the cards.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
that's right.
pirate stocks to the moon.
yeah.
Yeah,
So I'm
here's the thing.
excited.
Here's the thing though. If you ever play Ryan Miller, he'll just change the card to suit whatever need he has at any given time.
Just
It's
get
so
out the
funny.
Sharpie.
No, he does. He does this.
Yeah.
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 I was watching him play somebody in a two pack battle, and he had a card and he had written on it, gain 2 lore when played. And like he just played it. He's like, I win.
I would.
So
Nice.
much fun.
Hey,
What
when
about
you
you
create a
guys?
game, you could do that, right?
Yeah. It's so funny. But
I do think the enchanteds in this set are. I know they've been sort of controversial. There's a lot of people who love them and a lot of people who hate them. Um, I think there's too many of them that I actually want, whether I like the art necessarily or not. There's too many characters that are just sort of like a must-have, like Tigger and
Mhm.
Rafiki is a great one. The Lilo and Stitch one. I am a little disappointed that they don't all fit together to make a giant treasure map with the background
That would have been
behind them.
cool. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
You
was I
set
was hoping
yourself
for
up
that
for
one
that
since yeah, I
disappointment,
did.
though.
But I do really like the sort of treasure map motif with the like outline of the color of the card they are. Brad
Mhm.
will say they're not colorful enough for their color. He
I,
doesn't
I
like the King Candy from the last set because
I
it's
did not like that because I
red for a
forgot that
blue card.
I forget that's a
Right.
blue card when how red it is. But it doesn't bother me so much. I think they did a good job with the texts on these. When John pointed out that like, well, that scar today, the set championship scar is way too
Mm.
green for a red card. And I'm like,
Yep.
yeah, I get it, but it's scar, so he gets a pass.
yeah, I just like how the art for the enchantments has evolved in each set, so that if you don't like this,
Mhm.
no big deal. You might like the next like enchanted art
Right.
set. So there's always a style I think that'll eventually come around with you. I think actually, and I think Brad is going to hate me for saying this, but I do think the villain for this set should not have been Scar. They
Agreed.
were teasing out Azurite Seas. It should have been Hook. It should have been a pirate.
Or
Like, why
Jafar.
is
They
Yep.
yeah,
teased
why is it
Jafar for so long.
why is it Scar? Not that I don't think Scar is I mean he is a C tier villain, but that
For the uninformed,
Fate.
Brad's favorite villain is
yeah,
Scar by like
yes,
a mile. We've
Okay.
by
All
a
right.
mile. Yeah.
Not gonna ruin this day for me, Vince.
we have a segment where we have viewer questions that ask in, and if it has anything to do with ink color, favorite card, favorite combo, it we just skip Brad and we say Scar, and then we
Yeah.
move on to the one of us that have an actual answer for it. Because what card do you want to see? Scar. What playmat would you like? Scar. It's like
It's true.
so Brad's gonna
Hey, knows what
gonna
he
agree with
likes.
Scar.
Yeah.
Exactly.
No,
Yeah,
I
but I
just
do
like to give
think-
him trouble for it.
I do think they skipped Hades. Hades had some flavor text that was teasing as a big
Mhm.
bad. They skipped Jafar. How they had like 7 cards that teased Jafar as taking over after Ursula was gone. Skipped him,
Well,
and then
we don't necessarily know
pirate.
that
Now, there's
that
still
Scar's the
time.
big bad. Yeah,
Certainly.
Right. Because
yeah.
I mean, think about
This is just a set
Ursula. That
championship.
was,
They just
what,
did
three
Mara.
sets? When did we get the Illumineers quest and
So
Ursula's
it was
return?
That
set
was
Four.
Ursula's
four,
return.
four.
Yeah.
So
Set
set
four,
four
yeah.
Four,
sets
yeah.
in.
So there's still time, right? There were other villains in there mixed in,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it just means
Um,
Scar is a C tier filler villain. I agree. Moving on.
But if
uh, to get to back to your question about like the Azurite Sea set, the Forbidden Mountain kind of alluded to this, and I kind of agree that I think for the first time, resistance steel is actually gonna really matter in a way that it hasn't mattered. So there's some pretty interesting cards in the steel package. You've got this Calhoun Marine Sergeant, which is a
Mhm.
two uninkable 3 for 2 resist +1. That's a pretty good card. So I don't know. I think there's some aggro help actually that Azurite Sea has brought
Yep.
to the table, especially in Amber and in Steel. That makes that a viable path forward for the future. How good that's going to be, it's always hard to say because like I think we're always like, oh, is this it? Like, and what ends up starting out ends up not ending up being the end all be all meta. Like, I don't think anybody
Yep.
would have predicted that Emerald Steel would have been the like deck that it was at the start of Shimmering Skies, that it was at the end. So hard to know, but I do think some of these uh more keyword things are going to start mattering. So I think maybe we might see things like support and resist matter in ways that they haven't previously. And I hope that this is the first start of seeing tribal, like pirate, alien matter. But I don't know that we have yet enough cards. I think we're probably still a few sets away from that. But I think we're really starting to see uh Lorcana shift away from, oh, you're playing Amber Steel. Well, what Amber Steel are you playing? Now there's
Yeah.
more flavor to the game, and I think that's
Right.
super
A little more
exciting.
nuance and everything.
Yeah.
Yep. Yep. Yeah, it's interesting. Whenever they were doing a lot of the other reveals, especially the big Hero 6 stuff, you start looking at that and kind of start planning and thinking. And I was like, I wonder if I could do an inventor deck. And just like you're saying, just that kind of shift in thinking. You're not really thinking about what flavor or what colors you're playing or anything. And we've gotten so many new cards for like that kind of thing and pirates and it does seem like there's large chunks of cards in Azurite Sea that are really focused on those different groupings. um
Yeah.
and it's interesting to see how many of those groupings there's so many already built into the card base. There's tons of pirate stuff. There's tons of, there's actually quite a few inventors that were already in the previous
Hiram.
sets. Yeah, 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 yeah. So it'll be really interesting to see how things kind of shake out. And it is, you get the hype right before the set. Everybody starts brewing those decks, and then you start playing with those brews and you're like, actually, never mind. Just, forget that ever happened. Um, but then you start getting, more into the locals with the updated cards, and then, a DLC might come along and just blow everything out of the water. And, I think, that's really half the fun with this stuff, right? We get all these new cards all the time, and, the constant thinking about, what kind of decks should I play? What's going to be the meta? What do I need to compensate for? What's the latest, and greatest kind of thing? Because it seems like that kind of stuff changes on a daily basis almost. Somebody will post up a deck list and they're like, yeah, I use this to take down my entire locals. And, somebody's like, oh, that's a really good idea, and then it kind of evolves from there, the community kind of, sharing and building each other up and sharing, wider knowledge kind of thing. Um, I know everybody really dislikes the fact that there's not an online client. But while I would enjoy having one, yes, I also really like how diverse the meta got after that client went away. It was really interesting because it wasn't always just about those specific meta decks. It was more
Yeah.
it seemed like it was more freeing for people to be able to say, yes, I'm really going to start experimenting with stuff and see how this stuff goes. Um, which is really cool because that's part of the game, right? Playing the decks and stuff is only half of it. You want a good deck, you know how to pilot, you know what it's going to do, you know how to play it against other decks, and sometimes doing it yourself and building it that way is really the only way to really work that out.
Yeah, I, I think the sort of season of a new set and a new meta is really kind of interesting and sort of nuanced. You've got, like you said, that beginning there where your main focus is trying to figure out, trying to brew those, crazy concoctions of a deck to see how
Mhm.
well they do. You obviously have the decks you've built off of last set, just how can I make Ruby Sapphire items great? Let's throw the new cards in and see how they work and things. And then, you know, after you, like you said, the DLC or you hit a 10K or some other event happens that sort of puts a stamp in the meta that says these decks are viable, they can win. And now it sort of shifts what your focus can become to say, okay, well, if these decks are what people are going to start playing, what can I build to sort of insulate myself against that to help better my chances of beating those decks. And then the more and more solidified that gets, like we did here, I think with Seattle, where you can kind of predict a lot of what the meta is going to be by a large percentage, then you start seeing, then the name of the game becomes, can you brew that, like that 38 location deck or whatever that may top
Yeah,
64 in
yeah.
in Seattle? Can you build that crazy list that sort of breaks through and beats the current meta? And I think the lack of a digital client just sort of decelerated that. It slowed it down. And
Mhm.
for someone who's has no experience prior to TCGs, um, I think it's kind of a catch 22. One, I love it because it allows me the opportunity to stay up to date. Like I'm not that fast. I can't adapt to these things. I can't figure out these crazy brews as fast as other people. At the same time, though, you know the better players can, and so I'm somewhat of a disadvantage because I don't get the information from them as fast. But overall, I do really love this sort of cycle of, you know as the meta progresses, how your focus becomes to try and fit into that meta, whether it be countering it or joining it and teching against the bad matchups and things.
Mhm.
Yeah, I'll just say also on particularly on the online client side of things, we we started in July, and I'm not sure how our content would be if the said online client was still around. It's a hard, I think I think eventually Ravensburger is obviously going to create, I think that's like a pretty clear pathway that they're eventually going to get there at some point. I'd
Free
be
money.
very, very surprised if they don't.
Yeah.
But I do think there's a good thing that like we're developing a community, we're developing a strong core competitive in-person game. We're
Mhm.
like, as Andy
Yeah.
said, slowing down how fast the meta goes. Cause like, when you only got a limited card pool, you could find out the meta could quote unquote be solved in like
Yeah.
72 hours after release. And now
That
you're
gets
just playing
boring.
that for the next 3 months. And so, but I think like as more cards get added to the card pool, as we, expand all these events, having an online client will be less, I think, disadvantaged in the same way, right?
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
people will be able to play, you can get those reps in, you can practice and tinker around with decks, but you're also going to have more freedom to be able to like that that the meta isn't going to be solved like 4 days into buying
Right.
the set and stuff, and I think we see that in this fact that like card prices have overall kind of like settled down a little bit. Like there's a lot of
Mhm.
wild fluctuation in those first sets. Um, and obviously one card here will spike based on, coming up to a DLC or not. But less meta dependent, more like demand dependent. Like you see things like the Maui enchanted spike because everybody wants to bling out their deck going into Seattle or something. So I think overall it's just healthier for the game to be in the position we're in. And I know that's, not what everybody wants to hear, and that's just my opinion of it. But I think we're probably better off. And also I think the content coming out of content creators has gotten better too. Like we've got a lot more diverse way of content. Content creators that did do using online clients have to be creative in other ways. I don't think we
Yep.
would be doing things like the live stream, which Andy and I really, really enjoy. Like, I don't think if you asked us
Yeah.
6 months ago, like we would like live streaming. I think now we both want to. One of our goals is to actually cast at a DLC at some point. That would be like a real
Nice.
dream come
Absolutely.
true for both of us. And so, pros and cons to everything, right?
Yeah, yeah, of course.
Yeah, I think that's one of the reasons we sort of got started as well, or maybe not the reason we got started when we did, but I feel like the timing of us getting started, there was kind of this void in content creation because a
Mhm.
lot of people were relying on these digital, these unofficial digital clients to showcase the game. And like I said before, I saw other people doing it. And I'm like, I can do that, and it's a lot. You get more recognition for the effort you put into it. So I knew that if we just did it, we'd be one of the few people doing it, and it'll get us out there. And then, like Vince said, we fell in love with it. And honestly, I would live stream and cast just tournaments every week instead of the podcast if we could.
Yeah.
Nice, nice. Yeah, I mean, it's interesting to see how, one kind of content can lead to another, right? Like you said, I mean, I'm sure, before that, you never would have thought, oh, this would be something that I would enjoy. But, you give it a shot and then, yeah, this is great. I love this. And it leads to a whole different kind of situation and different kind of, um, opportunity, I guess, that you can get out there and you can say, yes, this is now I know this is something I want to pursue. And so yeah, I mean, best of luck to y'all. I hope to see y'all on a DLC stream someday.
I
You
I
know?
think
appreciate
they can
that.
do it. Yeah.
We just need
Yep.
a few more unique guests on our podcast, and then we'll be right there with Liam, and they'll have to consider
Yeah.
us.
Just a few. Yeah, get up to that number. Yeah. Yeah, no, no, and honestly, as the DLCs grow, like we were talking about, if they have more DLCs or they need more people involved in the production of it, I wouldn't see why they wouldn't have a larger base of people than just what do you think? There's like 7 or 8 people that do the casting. I'm not
Yeah,
exactly sure how many
Yeah.
they
folks
usually
do these days, but
they usually like have, I think, six at most at the event, and then I think Seattle they only had maybe four.
Right.
Um,
Well,
and
they
then
added the developers to the stream for
okay,
the
so
first
they had
time.
even less like
So
content
they had
creator
less
casters.
content, and they were more divided too. So it was Brendan and Brandon. Not that that's
mm-hmm.
confusing at all.
Yeah.
From Lorcana and B Squared, and then they were paired to a developer, and then they had Rebecca, I think, do a lot of the like on the
That's right.
floor
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
interview stuff, and so that's how they did that. Which they by the way, they did a fantastic job. I just want to say,
Oh
like,
yeah.
having done the live stream stuff, like it is harder than it
Yes.
looks. Like it
Yeah.
is not as easy as just setting up cameras and going live. It's like there's a lot of work that goes to it to be really good at it.
The first thing he said after the last one we did was he walked out when the pizza arrived during the semifinals. Is like, I now understand why they have different people coming in and out of the booth because when we do it, it's Andy and Vince in the booth all day. And so now that's one of the
Oof,
things that we
that's
can look in
rough.
the future and be like, okay, well, maybe we can get some other people to commentate, and which we did around where
Mhm.
Kirsten and Kristen, another one of those names that are, next to each other,
Not
did
confusing at all.
around.
Yeah.
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 Did around. And I think it helps too to give them a break, because when you're sitting back in that small room all day, just broadcasting games, like the day gets past you, right? And then
Yep.
you
Yep.
need that support for somebody else to come in, some fresh eyes, somebody excited, because maybe your demeanor is going down as you're broadcasting and not as
That blood
excited in
sugar
round
level
eight.
starts
Yeah.
dropping. Yeah.
Well,
But yeah,
well,
go
it's
ahead.
just so funny because no, like I'm talking a lot here, Brad. Sorry. Is that it's one of those things where you're talking and like you'll read the comments and like the commenters will see something you just totally miss because you're focusing on a totally different aspect of the
Yeah.
game in your commenting. And I think one of the things Andy and I have learned, and hopefully will develop as we go on, is that we're both very game centric and less like color centric about like, oh, this is where this character is from, and this is the art
Right.
by who and
Right.
stuff, and so having, I think, more of that caters because we talk a lot. You mentioned this earlier about how you never know what folks are really interested in, why they're listening to you, what they want to hear, and so many people are coming to Lorcana for different reasons, whether it be the game,
Mhm.
whether it be the art, whether it be their love of Disney, and so being able to hopefully try to spread out and bring all those people together for the love of the game for whatever reason that might be
Yep.
is ultimately I think our objective.
Yeah,
Yep.
that was one thing I learned from the DLCs. Originally, the DLCs in North America at least have like a color commentary and like a play-by-play. It's like the same person. So like one person
Mhm.
talking about the game and then another person talking about like I guess it's really play-by-play and color, but the color is more like, Disney and movie and things like that. And I remember thinking like, man, this is the top tier competitive. I want to hear two people just talking nonstop about hypergeometric math and which one has the probability to win. And then me and Vince both sit down and we're both trying to like play by play the same game. And I'm like, okay, this doesn't really work. We should have one person who helps,
Yeah.
and the same
Gotta have
thing
that
with like
balance,
learning.
right? Yeah.
Yeah, so I think um,
Yeah,
it
and that's not
we're
either
learning
him
as
or
we
me
go.
because he'll be like, "Oh, that's Candy Lady being played," in reference to like one of the
All of
Penelope,
parts
the
yeah.
from Wreck-It Ralph.
Yeah, all the
Right, right.
ladies from Wreck-It Ralph are just
The
Candy
Sugar Rush
Lady.
racers.
And
Yep, yep.
And it
and then
doesn't
I
help
read
that
the name off the iPad. And he's like, "Well, you just read that off the iPad. That's how you know it."
it doesn't help that
Well,
like
yeah, I mean,
when you read them when they get released, because a lot of times when a reveal gets done, it's done in like other languages, right? So
hmm
it doesn't help for me that when I first got introduced to a lot of these cards, I got introduced to it in like four different names. So it's like taffeta mutton fudge, but it's also like Snickers von Hershey, and then it's also like Tic Tac von Candy Cane, and I'm like,
Right, right.
okay, like they're just it's just a lady and she is made of candy or her car is or something, right? Like I've seen the movie, but there's too many ancillary characters I can't keep track. Plus,
Yeah.
it was a pack rush. We
it
were
was
we
it
were
was a pack
commentating a
rush in
pack rush. So
fairness.
Oh,
99% of these
that's
cards
even
we had never
harder.
seen before.
Yeah, like
Yeah,
I
yeah.
hadn't seen that card since it was released, and it was one of those cards where it's like, oh, that's definitely like bulk, right? Like,
Yeah.
like
Yeah,
that's for the
yeah.
binder.
Nice.
We were testing our chops though. It really put us to the test there. We
Yeah, I
failed.
can
We didn't know any of
imagine.
those cards.
Yeah, it's you get on the streams, the DLCs, and other than those random decks that somebody throws in there that has cards that you haven't really seen that much before, a lot of the cards are really similar, so you kind of have to, and there's only so many times that you can talk about Diablo and just list out the stats and it's like, okay, now you have to actually talk about something else about the card, the color
Yeah.
commentary side of things,
Oh,
but
look,
One of
another
the
Diablo.
I think one of the
yeah.
casters, and it was probably Brendan or Brandon. I remember hearing them say that while they were casting back during the Bucky era, the Bucky meta, their your co-caster would be like, so what is this what is this player looking for in their opening hand? And they were like, still Bucky.
Just
Still
Bucky.
just
Yeah.
Bucky. Yep.
Just Bucky.
Still
Yeah.
Bucky. And
Yeah.
he was like, I can only say that so many times. Like,
Mhm.
obviously it's just Bucky. So you're right.
Yeah.
It is but then it's the flip side of that is as soon as one of those cards they don't know comes up, Seven Dwarfs Mine, I guess it's just
Yep.
called Seven Dwarfs Mine, not
Mhm.
Mine Train or whatever. Yeah, when it got played with the like Ruby Steel deck, I believe. I remember all of the commentators just kind of being like, what is it again? And then like they'd
Yeah.
read it and
What
they
is this
know it,
card?
and then
Yeah.
two turns
Yeah.
later someone would move something to it and then be like, okay, wait, was it 1 or 2 damage? Is that a knight? Wait, what character is that again? And
Yeah.
so, they get bored of the same characters over and over again, but you don't
Mhm.
know all the characters, so it's kind of this
Yeah.
double-edged sword.
Yeah. Well, guys, thank you so much for spending some time talking with me. I really appreciate it. I've loved our chat. This has been great. I
It's been
think
fun.
we could probably go on for like another hour if we just kind of let it
Yeah,
run.
if,
But
if
Easy.
you let us, we would for sure.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
Have you seen our podcast?
yeah. I have. Yeah.
Go a little
No,
long.
no,
Longer
that's
and
all
longer
right.
each episode.
Yeah. Well, that's good. I mean, you got a lot to say, right?
That's right.
Do.
So. Well, I do want to end with the same three questions I ask all my guests, and I'll have, each of y'all answer these. First off, favorite ink and card right now, and it can be current card or future card in Azurite Sea.
Who are you starting with?
You, since you spoke up.
Me? Oh, okay. I feel like I'm always going to say Sapphire is my favorite ink, mainly because once you play Sapphire, it is hard to play a deck without that ramp anymore, or at least I don't like going back down to single ink. So I would say Sapphire, but I would break that Sapphire to as you probably guessed, say my favorite card is Scar, Vicious Cheater from set two, from Nicholas
It's a
Cole.
good one.
Right
Yeah.
now, it's up in the air though because I got my Brave Little Tailor by the same artist, signed by Steve Warner and Ryan Miller in Seattle. So it's sitting there as maybe my favorite card, but it's never coming out of that binder. So the Scar will see play. That Mickey won't.
Yep. And that's a good scar too. So
Yeah, it's
that's
a great
always good.
Scar.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Arguably the only
Amethyst
good
for
scar.
me is the color.
Yeah.
Amethyst, but favorite card is definitely the Mickey Brave Little Tailor. I got it signed by both Steve and
Nice.
Ryan Miller, the
Oh.
foil version of that. And it was like the first artwork I saw of the game and fell in love with
Mhm.
it. It's obviously like not the best card in the game by any metrics, but definitely still my favorite card of the game.
Yeah. Yeah. It's almost like if Lorcana had a mascot, that's kind of like
Yep.
Right.
which card it would
Exactly
be.
why. Yep.
Yeah. Yep. All right. How about you, Andy?
Um, I think I'm also gonna have to say Amethyst. I think it's the best color in the game. Sapphire is a lot of fun, and you
So
probably can't
mix
win
them.
the game without Ruby in your deck. But Amethyst, I just love the bounce package and drawing cards. Drawing cards is
Mhm.
fun. But I do think my favorite card is the Enchanted promo Rockstar Stitch. I think that art
Nice.
is just so awesome, and for me as a first time TCG player, being able to win that at my like home local game store where I originally started playing and stuff was just such a key the core memory for me at my grown adult age. But it's just so awesome.
Wait, is all our favorite cards done by Nicholas Cole?
Might be.
Yeah, apparently
That's
Is
so
it?
someone at
funny.
Oh,
Cole.
there you go.
Yeah.
I mean, he has made some
We
pretty
gotta have
awesome
him on the
cards.
podcast.
So,
Incredible. Yeah.
I mean, in fairness, let's just say, yeah.
Not wrong there.
Nice, nice. All right. Second question. Favorite Disney movie and why?
I know you're expecting me to say The Lion King, but I'm a big softie. I tell everybody The Lion King because it's cool, but I would say my favorite movie is Beauty and the Beast, and it's just I like
Oh,
I don't know, I think the music in it's great. I like romance of it, I guess. The Tale as Old as Time, I think, is a beautiful song. It gets me every time. Be Our Guest is just so much fun to belt out. But yeah, that would be my reasoning.
Okay. Nice.
Vince.
Andy. I'm fine. I'll go. I was.
Are you still thinking of yours? Or are we like ordering at a Mexican restaurant? Like you haven't decided what you want yet?
Well,
I have to
honestly, it's funny you
go,
say
you know,
that though. No, on Encanto. I really like Encanto.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Nice. Nice. That's a
Yeah.
great one.
I
That's one of my
really
favorites too.
I was really
Yeah.
surprised. It was one of those ones I hadn't like I was like waiting to see. And then I like watched it and I was like, why am I sobbing as a grown adult into this movie?
Yeah.
So yeah, it's just and it's also got such it doesn't have a lot of songs, but the songs it has are like super catchy.
Oh yeah. Yeah. And they're so fitting for the characters too. It's
Yeah.
not like they're all just kind of the same songs, you know, the same patterns and stuff. He did a really good job with the soundtrack for that one.
Absolutely.
Even the instrumental parts are great.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think mine has got to be Aladdin. When I mean the genie is just like chef's kiss, one of the best Disney characters ever. And I remember loving it as a kid. Singing the Prince Ali song and Friend Like Me, and I remember my first time going to Disney World. All I wanted to do was meet Aladdin and Abu, and that's all I wanted to do. And I remember it being like closing time at Disney World, and we were leaving, and I finally saw Aladdin like heading back to like he was leaving, and I like ran over as a little kid just wearing like these boots that got me like 2 inches taller so I could ride the roller coasters with my parents. I hugged Aladdin.
That's
and
great.
He signed my autograph book, and it was, so that holds a special place in my heart.
Oh, nice. That's
I do have
awesome.
to shout out Emperor's New Groove. My wife said that's incredibly underrated and possibly one of the best Disney movies.
It is really good. It still cracks me up that they got Eartha Kitt to play Yzma in that. I mean, of all the people, I mean, and she did an amazing job, but
Yeah,
it was
so
still just
good. It's
random
so good.
casting. But yeah, it was great. Yeah.
So good. And Kronk is amazing.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, all right. Well, tell everybody where they can find y'all, the podcast, videos, all the kind of good stuff that y'all put out.
You want to take it,
Brad?
Vince? Me?
No, it's all
Me?
you. Yeah.
The podcast is anywhere you can find podcasts on Apple, Spotify. I think are we still doing Amazon? I'm not
We're
sure.
everywhere.
We're everywhere.
Everywhere, baby.
But especially on YouTube, on the video format, we're doing a lot of fun stuff on YouTube, and then all of our socials are at Rules of Villainy from Discord, Facebook, Twitter. I think Vince is working on a TikTok maybe, and then Instagram as well.
Nice.
At Rules of Villainy.
At Rules of Villainy.
Awesome. Awesome. Perfect. Well, thank you again, guys. I really appreciate it. And I know it took a little time to get us all coordinated, but I'm super glad we did, and I'm glad we were able to have this time and sit down and chat, and I really appreciate it. So,
Me too, man.
thank
Thank
y'all.
you so much for having
Thanks.
us.
Yeah. Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course. And I'll see you around the community.
Hope to see you.
Thanks for joining us on today's episode. If you liked what you heard, make sure to subscribe and rate or like us on your platform of choice. If you'd like to reach out to the show, you can email us at lorcanachats@gmail.com. You can also find us on Twitter or X at LorcanaChats, the podcast at podcast.lorcanachats.com, or just lorcanachats.com. We love feedback on the show, and let us know if there's anyone you'd like to hear from in the Lorcana community. See you next time.